Chapter 27, Suspension Systems, Day 2, Video 5, Suspension Adjustments. So let's say from the previous video that we found that we need to adjust the positioning of the axles. We're going to use the suspension. There's built into the suspension capacity to move that axle back and forth. So not only does the suspension carry the load for the axles to the frame, it also controls the alignment or the adjustability of the position of the axles to the frame. So in the example we've got here, we've got a frame bracket or a hanger bracket, and then the leaf spring extending through that bracket. This would be a variable rate spring, so in that case we've got a torque bar or a torque leaf coming from that axle and then attaching to this lower adjuster mount that we've got down here. So in the illustration here we can see that this adjuster has a built-in eccentric to it, so that as I rotate this adjuster, that eccentric will, the center line of it will rotate around and either move that center line either to the right and away from the axle, or to the left and toward the axle, which then that torque leaf or torque rod is attached around that eccentric, and that would affect either move that axle to the frame or to the hanger or away from the hanger to get that adjustment that we're asking for. So in this case, we've got the torque leaf on here. One of the things that they're indicating on here is to put a tape mark or a paint mark on those components or on the adjuster itself, so that as you rotate it, right, we would loosen the pinch bolt and rotate that adjuster, and now with those paint mark or the tape mark we can tell how far we've moved it just for reference. If we've moved it too far or not far enough, we can gauge the movement so that know that we are making the adjustment, that we're going in the proper direction. So again, that would move this leaf either further through or push it away from the bracket, attach the axle and either pull the axle closer to the frame or to the bracket, or push it away to position that axle for alignment. Another style we could have is a torque rod, and then we've got a mount where it's attached to the axle and then to the spring hanger mount. So if we look at this torque rod, it's got an eyelet at each end, a rubberized bushing with a cross piece coming through it that now that bolts onto the hanger bracket or bolts onto the axle bracket here in the back. So this one we would change the positioning of that axle by either adding or subtracting shims. So we've got between that cross piece or the cross shaft of that bushing, we could put shims in here that would then move this part of the cross shaft forward, right? Since the other end is attached to the axle, it would pull the axle forward. If we wanted to move it back, we would either remove shims, and that would change that distance between the cross tube, or the cross piece here, the cross shaft, and push the axle back. If there are no shims to remove, we could add shims back here on the axle, and that would increase that distance and move the axle back. So just a couple different ways. Again, we're using suspension. We've got built into it adjustability for changing the position of the axles for alignment.